Ole Miss adds a second quarterback through the portal. Could Lane Kiffin be hitting the panic button when it comes to the man running his offense? Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to our everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com. All right, let's dive into it as the Ole Miss Rebels adding a quarterback from the Big 12 via the transfer portal. Of course, Ole Miss gearing up for what hopes to be another big season in 2025, building off of the last two seasons with double-digit wins in Oxford, and Lane Kiffin has done a tremendous job. But they will have a tough task in trying to replace their starting quarterback, Jaydn Ott, who was outstanding the last 2 years and went on to be a first-round pick. Well, on Tuesday, the Rebels picked up some depth in that quarterback room. You've got rising sophomore Austin Simmons still projected to be the leader, but Ole Miss was short on depth and experience in that room. And so they land Oklahoma State quarterback, let me try to get this name right, Maealiuaki Smith in the portal. Don't hold me to that pronunciation, but that's the best we got. Maealiuaki Smith coming in. He was from California, spent a year at Oklahoma State, and now he comes in, a kid who played some games last year at Oklahoma State. Ironically, he is the second quarterback in 3 seasons to transfer from Oklahoma State to Ole Miss, joining Spencer Sanders, who came in and joined the Rebels in 2023. Now, I remember that 2023 season because they had just come off of, the first year of Jaydn Ott. I think he threw for, 2,900 yards, something like that in 2022. They had Luke Altmaier. This was all, in the aftermath of Matt Corral leaving. So you had 1 year of Jaydn Ott, and it was like, wow, they're bringing in Spencer Sanders. Is this going to be a guy that's going to, compete with Jaydn Ott for that starting job? And Spencer Sanders ended up not playing. And I thought it was very strange because it was like, wait, why would a guy with that much experience, a 4-year starter at Oklahoma State, why would he transfer to Ole Miss and sit the bench? Well, it's basically what he did. He sat the bench behind Jaydn Ott because Dart took another step forward that year. He was awesome. And 2023 and 2024, Dart was stellar. But Maealiuaki Smith, he's a redshirt freshman. Like we said, originally a 3-star prospect out of California in the 2024 class. Appeared in the final 4 games of his freshman season. So he actually maintains his 4 years of eligibility still, including started the final 2 games of the season. In the start against Texas Tech, he threw 3 touchdown passes, over 300 yards, 74% completion percentage. But then he struggled in the game against Colorado where he threw a couple of interceptions. But Smith joins an Ole Miss offense that is looking to reload. I think they're looking for as many guys to compete for that starting quarterback job as possible, or at least, provide some depth behind Austin Simmons if he is going to be that guy. And like we said, Smith played in 4 games at Oklahoma State last year, threw for 489 yards, 2 touchdowns, 4 picks, completed 60% of his passes on the year. And he's from Sacramento, California, attended Junipero Serra, I think is how you say it, high school. It's the same high school where Tom Brady went. Now, he does have some familiarity. Former Oklahoma State wide receiver Dazon Stribling, he transferred to Ole Miss in December. They were teammates last year. Stribling actually caught one of Smith's 2 career touchdown passes against Texas Tech last November. So a little bit of familiarity there. But Ole Miss, they have added 3 quarterbacks through the transfer portal this offseason. Now, one of them, Louisville transfer Pierce Clarkson, he transferred out already. He already re-entered the portal. So Lane Kiffin trying to do what he can. Rebels will likely rely on Smith and Trinidad Chambliss to back up Austin Simmons. Now, Trinidad Chambliss came in from Division II Ferris State. Talked about him a couple of weeks ago. But your Ole Miss quarterback depth chart should look something like this. You're going to have Austin Simmons, most likely as a starter. And everybody's very high on Austin Simmons. I mean, the sky's the limit for that kid. And a lot of people think very highly of him. Now, I've had a few people tell me maybe they think 2026 is going to be the year he'll be awesome. Maybe this year might be a little bit of a growing pains year for him, where there'll be some really good, there'll be some bad, whatever. You never know. I mean, a lot of these kids, it's just all about how quickly they progress. But saw a little bit of Austin Simmons last year, but he expects to be the starter for Ole Miss. Then, like we said, number 2 on the depth chart will likely be Smith or Chambliss. And then don't forget redshirt freshman A.J. Maddox behind him. Maddox had some good moments in the spring last year as a freshman. Now he enters his redshirt freshman year, and so we'll see if he pushes any of those guys. But, yeah, I mean, it makes sense, right? Like with Pierce Clarkson heading out and Austin Simmons having limited football experience, do you really want to lean on the Division II kid, Chambliss, as the primary backup, or go get another Division I kid who's played in some games already, and that's what Smith has? So, interesting quarterback room for Lane Kiffin, to say the least. Now, look, the what he's had since he's been at Ole Miss. I mean, Matt Corral had the injury at the end, so that kind of hurt him. He hasn't been playing in the UFL, but was a draft pick of, I want to say, Carolina, ended up there. But obviously, the sky looks to be the limit for Jackson Dart as the future New York Giants quarterback. Was taking the NFL draft just a week ago, but it's a new age for Ole Miss and that offense. And Lane Kiffin, again, his track record with quarterbacks have been very good. But, what happens if Austin Simmons doesn't live up to the expectations? What if he struggles? Do you stick with him, or do you go with Smith or Chambliss and throw one of those guys out there? I don't know. I'm just thinking, what happens potentially worst case scenario for the Rebels? Best case scenario, Austin Simmons is awesome. Ole Miss, with another favorable schedule, wins 10 games. They make the playoff, and they do everything that they were supposed to do a year ago with Jackson Dart. Again, Ole Miss is a little bit of a wild card. They've just had so much roster turnover with a lot of guys going pro and losing guys to the to the draft or seniors or whatever. So we'll see on that. But again, Lane Kiffin, he's earned the benefit of the doubt when it comes to running offenses and particularly developing quarterbacks. Now, the running backs behind them. Rebels have upgraded that room tremendously. They lose Ulysses Bentley, Henry Parrish. They do bring back Logan Diggs, who seems to be healthy now, Dominic Thomas as well. They bring in Kewan Lacey, transfer from Missouri. Now, they had a kid named Jordan Simmons who had transferred in from Akron, but he already transferred back out, and he's at Georgia State now, so he's gone. But they did a couple weeks ago add Damian Taylor from Troy. If you were paying attention, he was a 1,000-yard rusher a year ago, so good pickup there. They just have to find, I've been saying this all offseason, Ole Miss has got to find consistency in the run game. That's when they've been most successful, and they've had that balance. When they've been a dominant run team on top of flinging it around the yard for thousands and thousands of yards. The big question is, will Ole Miss take a step back this year? You'll hear schedule. They open with Georgia State. Should be a win. They're at Kentucky week 2. Kentucky's rebuilding. They want to give them a little payback for what happened last year and ruining their season. So you think Ole Miss should win that one. They come home against Arkansas. Kind of a dangerous spot. That game's always seems to be tricky, right? Always weird things happen in that game. They get Tulane, who's no gimme of a, non-power 4 team, group of 5 team, whatever. They get LSU at home, but LSU, expects to be one of the top teams in the SEC this year. An interesting game in Washington State. Very interesting non-conference game in the middle of the season. And then that backstretch. At Georgia, tough. At Oklahoma, tough. You get South Carolina at home, but they're loaded with Lenore Sellers and company. You get the Citadel. You get Florida, loaded with DJ Lagway. We'll see what they look like at that point. And then you finish at Mississippi State for the Egg Bowl. Are they improved at all in year 2 under Jeff Levy? We shall see. But I don't know if it's necessarily, easy. I wouldn't define it as an easy schedule by any means. I think there's a lot of pitfalls on there. 10-2, I think, is possible if Austin Simmons lives up to what he's supposed to be. But, 9-3, 8-4 is possible. And maybe, look, it's not a bad season for Ole Miss by any means. I think that would be maybe, if I was making a prediction right now in May, which we'll make predictions later in the summer, but maybe this is a more 9-3, 8-4 type season for Ole Miss. A little bit of step back, but Austin Simmons gets his legs under him, develops as that next big star quarterback in the SEC, like we saw last year from Lagway, Arch Manning, Lenore Sellers. And in 2026, we're talking about him as one of the top quarterbacks in the SEC. Ole Miss absolutely loaded and a playoff contender and national championship contender in 2026. Just putting that out there. That's what I would, if I was putting money on it right now, who knows? But if you're an Ole Miss fan, totally get it if you think you're going 10-2 and making the playoff. More power to you. Hey, real quick, one other note here. Over at Florida, they had one of their defensive backs, Dijon Johnson, was arrested and charged with multiple felonies on Friday, ultimately released on bond 2 days later. But 247sports.com reporting Johnson was charged with possession of a controlled substance, a third-degree felony. He was also charged with possessing a firearm during commission of felony itself, a second-degree felony. In addition, he was charged with a pair of misdemeanors, possession of cannabis, less than 20 grams, and resisting without violence. It occurred in his hometown of Tampa. Florida spokesperson said, "We're aware of the situation of Dijon Johnson. We will continue to gather facts, cooperate with, and monitor the legal and administrative processes." Johnson is a former four-star recruit from the class of 2023 out of Tampa, played in all 12 games for Florida as a true freshman. And in 2023, 2024, played all 13 games of the Gators season and had a couple of pass deflections. Following the season, he underwent surgery to repair a torn labrum, which he was still recovering from during the spring. He is expected to be one of the Gators' starting corners opposite Devin Moore. Sharif Denson likely at the nickelback spot. You got Jordan Castell and Bryce Thornton as the safeties. With a couple of freshmen, Hayward and Stubbs, they're going to push for playing time. And then a DB behind Moore and Johnson, you have Aaron Gates, the highly touted former top recruit Cormani McClain, and a transfer from Southern Miss and Michael Caraway Jr. So we'll see what Ron Roberts and Robert Bala are going to do with that Florida defensive unit coming up this season, but certainly not what you want to have if you're Florida with one of your projected starting corners having a little bit of legal trouble in the offseason. One more note here. Former Arkansas O-lineman Zuri Madison entered the portal after just 1 year with the Razorbacks. He's a former 3-star recruit out of the state of Kentucky. And according to 247 Sports, he'll be heading to Arkansas State. So staying in the state of Arkansas, but going from the Razorbacks over to the Red Wolves of Arkansas State. All right, thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Coming up next, Greg McElroy talked a little bit about who he thinks should be some of the better running backs in the SEC in 2025. We'll let you know who he said is at the top of his list coming up here in just a second. Hey, but first, guys, scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. And with our friends at Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in the areas of marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to take your business to the next level. Upwork, they're going to give businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, which include IT, AI, web development, and marketing. And whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. If you need help with a marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who will deliver some incredible results. Posting a job is free and simple with Upwork. Within a day, you will get multiple qualified candidates to choose from. And instead of hiring full-time, Upwork helps you find affordable top-tier freelancers to scale your business efficiently. Go visit Upwork.com right now. Post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com. Upwork.com to connect with top talent and grow your business today. All right, roll along here. Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And Greg McElroy ranked what he considers the top 10 running backs for 2025. And on his list, he had 3 stars coming from the SEC. So on his Always College Football podcast this week, he talked about the top running backs in the country. And the first SEC running back that Greg McElroy had on his list coming from Oklahoma, newly added to Oklahoma, and that is Jaydn Ott at Oklahoma. He was among the most productive backs in the country in 2023 at Cal, but of course struggled with injuries and, just couldn't find his stride last year in 2024. But he's looking to help rejuvenate that offense. Brent Venables, he's got to have better offense this year. That's why he brought in Ben Arbuckle, the OC from Washington State, also brought in Washington State quarterback John Mateer, and he also brings in Cal running back Jaydn Ott. If Ott can produce one of those type of seasons that he had in 2023, be a massive, massive boost for the Sooners. But Jaydn Ott making Greg McElroy's list of best running backs in the country. Again, 3 from the SEC, and that's the first one. The number 9 running back on this list, a newcomer at Mizzou, another SEC newcomer, Ahmad Hardy. He was very under-recruited as a high school prospect, but had 1,300 rushing yards and 13 touchdowns as a true freshman at Louisiana Monroe. And look, there's one thing Eli Drinkwitz has not struggled with since he has been at Mizzou, and that is finding good running backs, from Larry Roundtree to Cody Schrader. I mean, even last year with Nate Noel and company, I mean, they've always run the football well. And so Ahmad Hardy, plenty of reason to think that he's going to be very good for Mizzou coming in. And so Greg McElroy's got him on his list of top running backs in the country, and one of his 3 best in the SEC. Now, the highest ranked SEC running back on Greg McElroy's list is number 7, and that is from the University of Texas, and that is Trey Wisner, also known as Quintravian Wisner. Wisner became a star last year with a 1,000-yard season after the injury to C.J. Baxter, and even with Jaden Blue on the roster, Wisner emerged as the dude. 200 all-purpose yards against Texas A&M, 100 yards and 2 touchdowns in the college football playoff win against Clemson, and big-time running back for Texas. Now, you also consider Texas has got just a loaded backfield altogether when you consider that C.J. Baxter is back now, healthy. And so we'll see what that offensive line looks like, but Trey Wisner, C.J. Baxter, Jarrett Gibson, Christian Clark, that's a pretty loaded backfield for Texas. And Sark's going to run the football a lot. So Texas, absolutely loaded. Trey Wisner with C.J. Baxter, going to be a dynamic backfield. So those are the 3 names from the SEC. But Greg McElroy's top 6 running backs all come from outside the SEC, including his number 1 pick, and that was Jeremiah Love from Notre Dame. So we'll see if some of these other players from the SEC can emerge. So I kind of did some digging. Who are some other SEC running backs that could be poised for a big year this season? And so just kind of digging through it. I think you started LSU, Caden Durham, coming off his true freshman year, ended up finishing 10th in the SEC in rushing last year. He didn't even start the year as LSU starter. It was a couple of games in the season before he took over. LSU did also add a dynamic freshman in Harlem Berry, who I think is going to play a good bit as well. But Caden Durham, look, we're a little bit biased. We had him on the show a few weeks ago on Locked On SEC. So a little bit biased towards Caden Durham, but I expect big things out of him. Look, he told us during the interview of his background on his cell phone is the Doak Walker Award. He wants to win that before he's done in college. And he also revealed he's got an LSU tattoo on his arm, so probably not going to be hitting the transfer portal anytime soon with that tiger tattoo on his arm. Another name to keep an eye on, Leveon Moss. He's back at A&M. He finished 8th in the league in rushing, and he would have been higher, but he got hurt in that first week of November. I want to say it was a South Carolina game. And now you got Ruben Owens, who missed almost all last year with injury, and Amari Daniels is back. Moss and Daniels were a dynamic duo last year. It's a 2-headed threat, but they would have been even more dangerous with Ruben Owens. And now they've got all 3 of them. Now, I assume Moss is still going to be he'll get the bulk of the carries, but Owens and Daniels will certainly take some carries away from him. But I expect the Aggies are going to run the football well again. I'd probably, if I was a betting man, would say A&M will be top 5 in the SEC in rushing as a team this year. And I think Leveon Moss stays healthy, should be a top 5 rusher in the conference. Over Florida, Jaden Baugh. Really liked what we saw out of him down the stretch last season. He ended up finished 15th in the SEC in rushing as a true freshman. See what the rest of that, running back room looks like. But I like Jaden Baugh, and I think he is poised for a big year in Gainesville. We shall see. Right behind him at 16th in rushing last year was Georgia true freshman Nate Frazier, who I think has a chance to be awesome this year. Now, they did bring in a transfer from Illinois and Josh McCray, and we'll see how Kirby kind of balances out the touches there. But Nate Frazier was exciting to see in that backfield last year, even behind Trevor Etienne. And I think Nate Frazier, the best is yet to come from him in college. Hey, remember that school up the road, Tuscaloosa, called Alabama? Well, how about Jam Miller over there at Bama? Finished 17th in the SEC in rushing last year. I bet Tide fans would love to see Bama get back to running the football effectively. Now, they got Richard Young. They got some other dudes on that depth chart, but Jam Miller, I think, could be a guy that has a big monster year this year with Ryan Grubb coming in and running that offense. Whoever wins that quarterback battle, they're going to want to be balanced. They want to be, if they could be 50-50 run pass, I think they would take that absolutely. So Jam Miller, certainly one to watch at Alabama. I really like Braylon Russell at Arkansas. He was a true freshman last year. I'm ready to see what number 0 is going to do for the Hogs this year. Remember, he entered the portal, pulled his name out. He entered the portal again, pulled his name out. I think most Hog fans are like, dude, just tell us if you're staying. Ultimately, he's staying at Arkansas. See what Braylon Russell does as he heads into year 2 with the Hogs. But like I said, I like the kid a lot. Runs hard. How about a Mississippi State? Devon Booth. Probably one of the more under-the-radar names here. But, I even had to double-check it. Devon Booth finished 9th in the SEC in rushing a year ago. Doesn't feel like he did. But he ended up getting another year of eligibility with the Diego Pavia ruling. And so Devon Booth, certainly a name to keep an eye on there at Starkville. I get it. Not many people are giving them a lot of, hope for 2025. But Jeff Lebby, he knows they're going to have to run the football to have a little bit of balance there behind Blake Shapen at quarterback. One of the big ones, we talked about this earlier in the week, but Rasul Faison, the running back from Utah State that transferred into South Carolina. Shane Beamer said earlier this week, we're still waiting to see if the NCAA is going to rule him good to go. They sent in all the paperwork and everything they needed. If he is ultimately deemed good to go, watch out. That is going to be a big force in that backfield for the Gamecocks in 2025. Other names just to watch. Not saying these guys are poised for big years, but keep an eye on Dante Dowdle over at Kentucky. He transferred in from Nebraska. They also have Jamarian Wilcox back. But Dante Dowdle, I think, could be that future back at Kentucky if all goes well there. How about Tennessee? Yes, Dylan Sampson is gone. But they have Peyton Lewis, Deshaun Bishop, Star Thomas. I think one of those guys, potentially Peyton Lewis, emerges and has a big year. But it could just be a running back by committee year. But the one thing they have done under Josh Heupel since they've been there in Tennessee has been run the ball effectively, no matter who the guy is. And then lastly, I've always liked Cedric Alexander at Vandy. He heads into his junior season there in Nashville, so we'll see what he does. But, look, some good running backs in the SEC, just not getting a ton of national love. So that was Greg McElroy's list. You be the judge, but I think some of those names I mentioned, kind of under the radar names, could really surprise this year in the conference. All right, still more to come here on Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And look, guys, NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night is delivering some highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. And whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time than for you to get in on the action. And that is over at FanDuel, who's going to make it easy for you to stay in the game before tip-off and live in-game with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have way more ways than ever to play smart and win big. You need to go check out FanDuel.com right now. You can pick what players are going to show up in the biggest moments, and you can see how you can track their trends by helping you build your next bet. If you got a read on who is heating up, why not back it with a same-game parlay? And How about a $200 in bonus bets to add to the excitement if your first $5 bet wins? Check FanDuel.com right now for the latest playoff odds and player props. If you're new to FanDuel, like we said, perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet, and if it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Our final segment here on Locked On SEC, and on the way out of here, we're talking a lot of football. How about a little bit of basketball tidbits here from the SEC? How about Todd Golden reportedly landing a massive contract extension with the Florida Gators? Florida coming off their first national title on the hardwood since 2007. The Gators rewarding Todd Golden with a massive new deal. Basketball insider Jeff Goodman was the first to report on the news with what was expected to be a 6-year deal that would put Golden among the highest paid coaches in the country at just 39 years old. He's got his first title in just his third season in Gainesville. And Jeff Goodman reporting the deal is worth $40.5 million. So that's an average of $6.75 million annually. And according to USA Today's coaching database, Kansas head coach Bill Self was the highest paid coach in the country at just shy of $9 million. 5 coaches in the country made at least $6 million last year. And so Todd Golden now joins that exclusive group. Golden, of course, began his ascent as a key assistant for Bruce Pearl at Auburn, then went to San Francisco for 3 seasons, made a March Madness appearance with them. And after arriving in Florida, the Gators missed the NCAA tournament entirely his first year. Got there in year 2, and this season rolled to the SEC tournament title before going on that legendary run and winning it all. Now, as we look to next season on the hardwood, 6 SEC teams landed in ESPN's latest top 25 men's college basketball rankings, which just came out this week. Florida, just a month removed from their 3rd national championship, but topping the list of SEC teams, Arkansas at number 10. They think John Calipari and what he's done so far in recruiting in the transfer portal, coming off a Sweet 16 appearance in Cal's first season in Fayetteville. They think Arkansas could be the best team in the SEC heading into next year. Again, we got all off season to debate this. It's only May, but this is the list from ESPN, Jeff Borzello. Behind them, he's got Kentucky, 1 spot behind him with Mark Pope's crew at number 11, Kentucky Wildcats. Bruce Pearl dropping them down to 15 with Auburn. And Borzello said Bruce Pearl's roster faces some questions out and turnover after they reach the Final Four. Nobody discrediting, what Bruce Pearl's done there, but says, they're in at 15. They lose Chad Baker-Mazara to the portal. Todd Pettiford declared for the draft without hiring an agent. Left the door open to return to the Plains. We'll see what happens with him. So Arkansas 10, Kentucky 11, Auburn 15, Florida 18. They dropped the national champs with all that they lost, and Walter Clayton Jr. off to the NBA. Florida at number 18, and then the 2 other teams in the SEC that they have in the top 25, Alabama at number 20. Tennessee at number 20, Alabama at number 24. So I think a lot of that is just kind of based off of roster turnover and Alabama losing a ton, Mark Sears and all those guys. So I think when we get closer to the start of the season, when we get into October and then into November, I think we're going to see a lot of these SEC teams maybe rise back up the ranks. But that's just one guy's opinion over at ESPN, Jeff Borzello, putting out his rankings for the for a very early look at the college basketball season, rather, in 25/26. So take that for what it's worth. But look, no doubt it was a fantastic season for the SEC on the hardwood, and certainly got to think that they are going to be poised for another big year. And maybe they don't get that many teams into the NCAA tournament again next year, but certainly should be a very good year. Now, will they win it all again? Hey, let's have another team from the SEC win the championship in basketball. And it was a long absence from Calipari and Anthony Davis in 2012 to Todd Golden and company in 2025. So see who does it in 25, 26. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen today. For your second listen, you can check out the Portal Show, where Brian Smith has you with the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find the Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked On SEC. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.